Hello and welcome to Weekly MTG. I'm your host, Blake Rasmussen. And we, of course, this week will be talking about the banned and restricted announcement that was made yesterday. To do that, we got these headphones on, you may notice. So we have a special guest coming in virtually. There's Dave. So our two guests today, Carmen and Dave, real quick, why don't you two introduce yourselves? Let's start with Carmen.
Howdy gamers, my name is Carmen Clemparens. I'm a senior game designer over on Magic's Play Design team. You've probably seen me on a few of these banned and restricted update streams at this point, but how about you, Dave? How's it going?
It's going great, Carmen. I'm Dave Vincent. I'm a senior manager of digital product on MTG Arena. I do a lot of different things, basically everything outside of the actual play space of playing the game, in playing the actual cards I do. So I do the store, events, Arena Direct, and format management.
Cool. So Dave is here. He's new. He's going to do great. Welcome, Dave. He's going to talk a lot about the Brawl stuff. So most of the cards banned yesterday were in Brawl. We are going to start with some of the tabletop ones in Legacy and Pauper. So we're going to start by talking about Legacy. So Carmen, take us a little bit through the decision to ban Candelabra of Tawnos there.
Right, so Candelabra of Tawnos is a card that has actually been banned before in Legacy way back. This is funny.
I think I saw 27 years ago.
Something like that was when it was unbanned, actually.
Yeah.
So it initially was banned back in, I want to say it was 1996, maybe late 95 when the format was founded. Yeah. Admittedly, I was still in elementary school at this point, but you can still find some old Usenet emails about people arguing if land tax should be banned or black buys should be restricted in Vintage and so on. But it was banned way back in the days of Tolarian Academy and the like. Yeah. It ended up getting unbanned whenever we saw Time Spiral and Memory Jar get banned at the same time because of how great those cards were at letting you abuse a lot of fast mana generation. Things were fine for kind of a long time, but then when Time Spiral did get unbanned about almost 15 years ago, a little bit after Mental Misstep got unbanned and all of that nonsense, you saw it immediately get very strong again in the back of High Tide. Luckily, Legacy can absorb a lot, but it was quite dominant for a little bit in the hands of the Hatfield brothers out of the, I want to say it was the Virginia area.
That's in the Wayback Machine.
Yep. I know. Huge props to them. But recently, we kind of referenced this in a couple of our more recent updates. We've seen a lot of colorless Tron decks that were abusing this card, and we're seeing it creep up 3-4 copies in most of those decks. It ended up having a lot of competitive success in the online metagame, and in spite of winning, the format really couldn't adjust to it in a lot of ways. We saw its population in the format continue to rise, and its win rate continue to rise with it, when normally there's a slightly inverse relationship between those two things, where the larger a metagame share a deck has, the more its win percentage kind of pressures towards 50% by virtue of mirrors. So when it continues to rise anyway, that really sounds the alarms for us. We do think that colorless Ancient Tomb decks and some of these Tron strategies have looked pretty cool historically, but Candelabra of Tawnos was one of the more recent inclusions to the deck that let it really go from 0 to what kind of felt like tier 0. Yeah. And as a result, we really wanted to act faster on this one to try and give the format a little bit more time to adjust before the Eternal Weekend events that are coming later this year.
Sure. Well, now, speaking of later this year, so we did just release a card called Fantastic Card that has been sort of the talk of the Eternal community. We'll put that up there. And there's been a lot of speculation about this card being something you can trigger on turn 1. Yes. Essentially, turn 1 or turn 2 or very early in the game, creating 4 colorless constructs that I'm going to say 4 a bunch here. 4 colorless constructs with flying and haste as early as turn 1 or 2. Was there a discussion about Fantastic Card?
Yeah, it's a card that we looked at a little bit. Something I'll say is generally philosophically, we are pretty opposed to taking preemptive action in places like Legacy and Vintage for the most part. So those formats historically have been able to absorb a ton. This is the type of card that plays really well with artifact synergies and fast mana, which are two of the things that are notoriously common in both Legacy and Vintage, of course. But we've seen things like the Initiative, for example, be comfortably absorbed into Vintage despite seeing a ton of early dominance whenever it first hit the format. So this was something where it was not clear to us if this would simply be strong and fun or inappropriately strong, format dominant, pushing everything else out. We don't think things are looking great earlier on, but we do want to give these formats time to adapt. And this is the type of card where if things continue to look bad, as evidenced by Candelabra, which we just got done talking about, we're not going to hesitate to take action. But on a fundamental level, we do think that these are the formats where people like to do strong and powerful things and showcase the most broken things that our game has ever had. So there is a place to do that. It probably is in places where the Fantasticar can hang and may end up being too strong, but at least for now, we didn't want to get out ahead of it in case it turns out Force of Vigor or Force of Despair, whatever it is, can actually check these cards at an appropriate clip.
Okay. Now, so is this a card you're going to be watching between now and the next BNR is in August? One of the reasons that we did these more frequent ones this year is to be able to check these things soon after. Is this something you'll be watching closely?
Yes, this is certainly something that our Legacy and Vintage experts are going to be keeping a close eye on. It isn't lost on us that this is a very, very strong card, and if it looks like it's going to have long-term negative impacts on the format, that is certainly not something that we want to allow for a long time.
Yep. All right. Let's move on to Pauper real quick. There was a ban of Seeker of Skybreak. This one was primarily banned for its combination with Hawkeye's Bow, in which as early as turn 3, you can just kill your opponent. So there was a Pauper article that explained much of this, but do you have anything you want to add about Seeker of Skybreak here?
No, generally this is the card that the team went after because it is the thing that's the highest value above replacement. I'll say that this is honestly kind of similar to why we went after Candelabra of Tawnos in Legacy, where these sort of unbound or abusable untapper effects are something that is sort of a relic of design where we don't really do this stuff very often anymore, and is something that we take pretty great caution with historically. You can see we try and back it behind timed triggers like beginning of combat or something to that effect. And as a result, this was a card that we thought was high risk to end up having a problem like this again in the future, because we are making more cards like Hawkeye's Bow, where we maybe want it to hook into Convoke or vehicle synergies on top of working with attackers and so on. And as a result, my understanding is the Pauper team wanted to make sure that we weren't back here in a year.
Yeah. Yep. All right, makes sense. We are now going to move to the meatier portion of this, and Dave with Brawl. So, Dave, before we get to, well, let's instead of individual cards, let's go up to Dave. Hi, Dave. We want to look at your face. Before we get to individual cards, this is a bigger push. This is 7 cards. There's some format changes. So why don't you talk just generally at first about what the Arena team is looking to do with Brawl right now?
Yeah, so Brawl is Arena's fastest growing format. It has been since it was introduced. And as it's grown, the player base has grown with it. And we have largely come to the conclusion there's 2 different groups of Brawl players when they enter the Brawl queue. There's a player who is trying to play Typal Squirrels and just have like a fun time with that deck building strategy. I personally have a Goblins deck. And I'm not necessarily looking to optimize my win rate when I'm doing that. I'm just trying to do fun and novel things. And then there's another group of players that want to play some of the most powerful Magic we have with some of the most busted, commanders possible.
Yeah.
And we recently introduced the competitive Brawl format to break away these 2 different groups so players can opt into, what the type of experience they're looking for. So competitive Brawl just launched, so we didn't make any changes there. But it allowed us to start better curating the unranked Brawl queue in a way that, players have been asking for a long time, and we've wanted to do for a long time, to help, slow the format down and largely make more commanders viable is sort of the approach we're going for here. We want everyone to be able to pick any commander, find a good opponent to play against their chosen commander, and like what they're looking for out of the game.
So just so that our fans who maybe aren't as familiar with Brawl are clear, so these bans, do they affect competitive Brawl?
Nope.
Okay.
In competitive Brawl, there's no cards banned in the 99 currently. There's only a few commander cards banned that were sort of above even the top level of most competitive cards.
Yep. And so before we talk about the individual cards, what was your sort of overall philosophy? How did you attack this? Did you look at the most played cards? Did you look at high win rate cards? What was the philosophy behind this round of bans for casual Brawl?
Yeah, great question. We've had some troubles, starting kind of making a philosophy for Brawl as a format because we would hear from players that like, XYZ card is too strong and overwhelming the format. But when we look at the data, we didn't necessarily see that, especially for cards in the 99, because no matter how powerful a card is, you still have to draw it. So the first round of just picking, powerful cards wasn't enough. We looked further into looking at if the card was in your opening hand and how much that affected your win rate. So, potentially these cards that maybe make a game that could be interesting into like a non-game because someone, took it away very quickly. A lot of the fast mana sort of card category fits into that.
Yeah.
We also took in a lot of player feedback about the types of things they were sort of like leading to unfun. In the experience. We also looked at the player feedback survey that happens at the end of matches, looking at cards that are fun to lose against and unfun to win with as categories, and took all of that into account and broadly made a couple categories of cards that were establishing this sort of new Brawl philosophy around BNR.
Okay. So what were those broad categories of cards that may help us as we go through these individually?
Yeah, so it's fast mana. That's anything that's accelerating your mana sort of permanently on a permanent. Free spells in general, but we mostly looked at free counter spells in this BNR. And then we also addressed the cards that gave you extra turns without that card going to exile. So like their loopable extra turn framework, because it's not too fun to just play, while your opponent is just going on forever with extra turns.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to the individual cards, and we saw a preview of the first one there. So, next card. Secret Skybreak's not banned in Brawl. There we go.
Not
Force
yet.
of Will. Not yet. Force of Will. So, Dave, sounds like this one falls into that free counterspell category.
Yes, absolutely. This one and Subtly, which is another card in this category, they're very, very similar. Had some of the higher win rates. I know we look at that with like a caveat, but also they created this change in the game where it was no longer safe to attack or cast your cards when your opponent was tapped out. They could play one of these free counter spells to largely stop any sort of progress or progression you would have, and we wanted to sort of add that safety back into the format, so players could play around counter magic, and that's largely the reason this Force of Will and Subtly were banned. Subtly had the highest win rate of cards in the 99, or among the highest, so it was a clear outlier, and Force of Will being just as powerful. We thought this was a good first step iteration. And I would say that about all of these.
Yeah.
We're excited to start doing a lot more curation in Brawl, but we didn't want to do everything at once. 7 cards is already a lot, and we wanted to, show this message that we are taking this step. But we didn't want to do everything at once, and we want to see how the meta changes, how players play changes as we take these steps.
Yeah, let's go to the next card, Subtlety. It was interesting to hear. Did I hear you right that you said Subtlety actually has the highest win rate of cards in hand?
I'm hesitant to use 100%, but it was within the top 3, I would say, definitely.
Okay. It's interesting to me that it's higher than Force of Will, but that's kind of cool. You can do a lot of things with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so our next counterspell is not free, but is maybe even more frustrating. Wash Away. Talk about this one, Dave. Yeah.
This is sort of a long time coming. I think after the BNR went live, I had lots of solid players and social media talking about like, oh, like no one was surprised that this card was on the list.
Hmm.
So since introducing, it sort of just became a very cheap counter spell for commanders
Yeah.
in the format, and sort of was an auto include in any blue deck that had access to it. That's another thing we're sort of like watching is we like how diverse Brawl is, and we don't necessarily want to include cards that would be in every single deck. That's not what this on ranked sort of like more casual leaning format is about. And so it was time. It was time for Wash Away to go away.
And to your point, this is definitely the kind of card where you see it on a ban list, and even if the text box is unassuming, you kind of go, yeah, I can see how that's pretty annoying.
Well, I mean, yeah, and for both Brawl and Commander, we've had we've been fairly forward in banning cards that specifically hit commanders. Things
Yes.
like Pithing Needle that
Yes.
are really cheap answers to commanders specifically, because that's kind of the whole fun of the format.
Yeah, the whole spirit of it is I get to build my deck around this one thing.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the fun thing.
That's the fun thing.
Absolutely.
All right. Next up, we have our only non-blue card on the list. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But Ugin's Labyrinth.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the fast mana category. So we already saw, we took some action in Brawl previously against fast mana with Ancient Tomb and Chrome Mox, cards that sort of accelerate just your ability to produce mana and play your cards, resource acceleration permanently every turn. With these cards, it's really the sort of like your opponent has gotten away with it. The game is pretty much over when something like this comes out on turn one, and there's not much to do. We see a lot of concession when this happens, and so we're pretty protective here, especially about cards that. Yeah, they're permanent cards. So you're permanently up one on your opponent when you play a card like this. We get a lot of questions about cards that don't that are less permanent. So like Dark Ritual being legal in the format, and those types of like single moment swings, we've seen less of a impact or concession rate, or we think are a net fun for the format as opposed to something like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
We often call these cards like Soul Ring like cards too,
Yeah.
because we don't have Soul Ring in Brawl. A very similar effect. And in multiplayer and Commander, you have the other people on the table to sort of like gang up on the person who got their Soul Ring down early. But we don't have that in Brawl.
Yep. Makes sense.
And I think you highlighting the point on Dark Ritual being pretty different makes a lot of sense. That's a big, exciting moment where theoretically, if you have some sort of removal spell to get whatever the Dark Ritual cranked out ahead of schedule, the game goes on from there.
You
But
actually
if
get some card advantage there.
Right. And if you tag
Exactly.
whatever Ugin's Labyrinth cast, well, Labyrinth's back again next turn.
Yep.
Yes, exactly.
Makes sense. All right. Last two cards are basically the same cards. So we're going to look at them 1-2. We're going to see Time Warp and then Temporal Manipulation. So they're the same card. They're basically the same card. Slightly different wording. But yeah, so we got 2 5-mana extra turn spells here, Dave.
Yeah, so these cards basically the same. I will be honest, I was on the other side of the debate initially of these cards internally when we were talking about them. I'm like, it's fun to, like, this is my strategy. I want to take all the turns.
Thank you for representing me in that meeting.
Absolutely. Someone
Are
has
we
to.
the
But
baddies?
Time Warp is like one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite cards. Yeah. Anyway.
yeah, it's fun to sort of build a big scheme, right, around this and, have it pay off. But then this was one where I would say the win rate was a little too high in the way where I was like convinced quickly that the other person was not having fun in that match of me taking, infinite extra turns and sort of making it into a one-player game. And, you can still do these strategies in competitive Brawl. So we've carved out that space for us being the bad guy. And we're protecting the sort of, more deck diversity, like casual fun that we want Brawl to be by removing these cards.
Yep. All right, now I got to ask the question. It's kind of like a dagger to my heart. So, 6 of these 7 cards are blue cards. Is there any concern? What of it? You're just like, yep, one, why do you hate me? 2, no.
We only have an hour?
Is there?
Sorry. I'm sorry, buddy. I'm sorry.
My actual question is, one, in Brawl, did you see blue overrepresented? And then 2, are there thoughts or concerns around blue's representation after these bans?
We do see a lot of representation of blue. It's not overwhelming the format, but it is a lot of the feedback on the format from, players, our most trusted players who really love the format, that having so much access to powerful counter magic has been a problem, and is preventing other strategies from emerging. Blue still has many other powerful cards. You can play Days in your deck, and I think they're well equipped to still be a contender, and all of those strategies still work. I said I wasn't going to talk too much about competitive Brawl, but we are seeing some early signs that blue is quite strong there as well. So that's something we're kind of keeping an eye on. But yeah, I think this is just a small step to sort of bring blue back within the band of the other colors.
Yep, fair enough. I do want to, so there was a question in chat. So first of all, chat, we're about to move to the Q&A section. So if you have questions, as some of you are doing, helps to tag @Magic in the chat so I can see it. And then we'll ask those from there. We'll try to get to some questions. We'll go from there. So the first one I have, and the reason I wanted to stay here on Brawl, is someone asked, when looking at fast mana, was Gemstone Cavern considered?
Yeah, we did discuss Gemstone Cavern. That's probably another card still on our radar. We didn't think this was the right time, but recently, just in my games, I've been experiencing it can help run away with the game quite early if you start it with your opening hand. That's another card that we're really evaluating the difference between having it in your opening hand versus not. But right now, don't feel the need to take any action.
Okay. Next question that I am seeing a lot of, I'm going to ask, it's been asked in a number of ways. So Carmen, this is going to be for you. What happened to the standard quote-unquote early rotation that was planned for March in this question?
Sure. So this is something where generally we take ban events very seriously, and we frankly think standard looks like it's operating in a healthy way at the moment. We think that there are some play patterns that the format may be a bit faster than we would like on the whole. I know we've talked a lot about the pressure the Badger Mole Cub exerts on the format, and there's a ton to be unpacked and said there. But because we feel like there are different strategies popping up week over week or finding success week over week, we really don't want to mess with the formula too much at this point. I would say the next time that we're looking to do that sort of what we call an early rotation window where we cycle a few cards out is probably closer to the rotation, which is going to actually be happening with the calendar year starting at the end of this year.
And I think that's a good reminder because last year the rotation was in the fall, where it's been for a very long
years.
time.
They're saying 30s of years.
Yeah. But we did make that change that it's happening with the calendar year.
Yes.
It's a little easier to keep in your brain, but it's also something that people are still getting used to, that the rotation is coming in January, February timeframe.
Yeah, and I'd say that last year, if memory serves me, that was when we actually removed 7 cards from the format, and that was something where it becomes very hard to, when you make that large of a shift at one time, it becomes very hard to actually predict how the metagame will end up falling over time. And we didn't want to end up in a position where we remove 1 or 2 cards from the format and end up with a much worse format than the one we have right now. The one we have at the moment we feel is good enough and able to self-correct on a week-over-week basis in such a way that we think it's fairly healthy, and we value stability very highly at the moment.
Okay, so would it be fair to say that for standard, you're not happy with the speed?
Yes.
But you don't think 1 or 2 cards would change that considerably, and the format is self-correcting, so it's playing like a healthy metagame. It's just faster than you'd like.
Yes, that is a very good way to put it.
Okay, all right. So there may be changes to try to address that later in the year, but right now it's working good enough.
Yeah, I would guess at some point in the next announcement or two, we'll end up talking a bit more specifics about the dates when people can expect that early rotation to happen, or our sort of broader state of standard address. But at least at the moment, we are happy enough with where things are that we don't believe it warrants a change.
Sure. Okay, let's go back to Legacy. So this is more a design question, but I think it's a good one. Do the teams creating commander cards consider the impact on Legacy? We've seen this a few times throughout Commander's history, where things like True Name Nemesis was kind of the first one. How much does that team consider the impact on Legacy Vintage? How much does it not, and leave that up to the ban list? What's the balance there?
It's varied over time. This is a philosophy that has been developing a lot in recent years as we've kind of ramped up the number of commander decks that we make per year. It's something we put additional scrutiny on. And there are some ways where we can see healthy impacts on the format. I would say in the space of Kappa Cannoneer is something that looked like it was pretty fun, and it breathed new life into a beloved style of deck. And then there are cases like the Fantasticar, which look like they are pretty high risk of ruin, but do a lot to reinforce why this is something we should be paying a lot of attention to. I can say that I personally now have added it to my day-to-day job to go through and review literally every single card that goes out the door. And you see a lot more, say, 3-mana cards that have an extra pip on them, so they play a little bit worse with Ancient Tomb, rather, in the Stompy strategies and the like, where there are... It is very hard to develop philosophy overnight, and it kind of takes a series of mistakes, right? Experience is a very valuable but very harsh teacher. And this is a spot where we are learning, and it takes a long time to steer the ship, but this is something that we care about. And I like to think if this were a card that came across our desk today, we probably would ship it at a lower rate, I would guess, without the haste on the tokens or something to that effect.
Okay. All right, we're going back to Dave on this one. When looking at Brawl, has there been any notice to commanders that are, quote, one-card combos, such as Wrath and Mikey or Aang at the Crossroads? I'd imagine they are among the least fun commanders to play against based on your community feedback.
Absolutely. For Brawl, we are leaning into a philosophy that we want as many commanders as possible to be legal. But there are some commanders, like these mentioned, that are very powerful commanders that kind of create, a sweeping change in the play state. So those commanders, we largely try to match them all against each other, is our balance philosophy. So if you're playing a super powerful commander, you can go play at that table where everyone is playing the super powerful commanders. I'll be honest, there are some technical limitations with our matchmaking right now that it's not quite working out how we want, but we believe this is largely a matchmaking problem that we will fix with matchmaking. Engineers are already working on it to better match, your commanders sort of ranking that we're giving them, plus your player skill together to find the best opponent.
All right. I'm going to answer this one. Will there be a slowdown in product release? The pace is pretty fast. We've said this a couple times. There will be 6 main booster releases next year, 7 this year. This year was kind of an odd year as we just worked out our schedule. Next year will be 6, and I can do a little plug because we're going to be heading to MagicCon Amsterdam in a couple weeks, where we will have the preview panel. And for those who have checked out the description of that preview panel, we are going to be talking about 2027 during that panel. So more information to come then. But the answer is yes. We're heading towards a 6 main releases a year. So yes. Let's see. Back to Carmen here. So, to clarify, we should not expect any changes to standard prior to the next RCQ season. So the next BNR is in August. philosophy there?
Yeah, this is a spot where generally we don't want to be making changes to standard unless things look ruinous. I can't say that there is a 0% chance that we would make changes. If we see something that is truly dominant in the format, I would say at the Nadu level that we saw in Modern a couple of years ago, that's a spot where we're not happy with VV more recently in Standard is something that was pretty bad, and we did feel the need to step in, and like the format could not correct for itself. If something like that were to happen, it is somewhat likely we would step in and make a change, but otherwise I would not expect any changes in the near future.
Okay. Heading back to Legacy and Candelabra, why was Candelabra chosen as the banned card and not Planar Nexus as the card which permits Candelabra to generate so much mana?
Because we think the Planar Nexus Tron decks are cool. That's something where it's entirely possible that those decks can be fun. We think it is really cool whenever new cards enable old cards to see new and exciting play. Candelabra is a card that historically has only shown up when something problematic is going on. And so this is the type of situation where we're going to keep printing exciting lands. We're going to keep printing sort of new emergent ways to tap for a lot of mana and the like. It felt like that we would be back here again someday, and it is more likely that Planar Nexus can be part of a fun and healthy Legacy metagame than Candelabra can, which ended up having us say, you know what, we're going to give Planar Nexus some more time.
Yeah. Well, I also think you touched on it earlier when you were talking about this in Seeker of Skybreak. I think there's something interesting philosophically to talk about in hitting the unique card.
Yep.
The card we're unlikely to print a version of. When you're looking at lands that make multiple mana under certain circumstances. That deck is full of them. Like, it's not just that card. That card certainly supercharged it. Whereas we don't print things like Candelabra. Is that often how you all think about these bans?
Yeah, that one does come up a good bit, right? Where some of it comes down to if we think it is actually going to kill a deck or not, which we're generally reticent to do. I think Amulet Titan's an example of one where you've seen us kind of hack away at the edges of it rather than banning the card Primeval Titan, which would completely change how the deck has to function. But in a spot like this one, we've seen versions of this colorless Tron deck exist that did not play Candelabra and felt like they existed at a healthy win rate, healthy play rate, and so on. We think it's really cool whenever colorless decks are about going big and playing these huge, exciting, splashy spells, and not necessarily always circling around trying to Chalice check your opponent on turn one with something like Chalice of the Void and an Ancient Tomb.
Yep, makes sense. All right, I'm going to answer. Well, I'm going to non-answer. I apologize. The next question, because it's the most asked question, but we don't have an answer for it today. So, when is the next Commander BNR announcement? We don't have a date for that set right now. I'll sync up with Gavin, and we'll see if they have a date in mind. But as of right now, we do not have that next date necessarily set in stone. All right, I'm checking to see if there are any other. Here, Dave. This is a question I've seen a couple different ways. Are there any plans for a Brawl format that doesn't include alchemy and has a closer experience to paper?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. We definitely are interested in exploring more formats on Arena, maybe that aren't permanent queues, but are like limited time events. So this month we're doing a historic pauper event. That's not a normal queue, but we've just seen players are really into historic pauper, so we're doing a week-long historic pauper event. I could see exploring it in a space like that a lot. So we are trying all these different new formats. Not all of them we think have the audience to have like a permanent. You can always play on Arena. We want to make sure everyone can find an opponent very quickly. We don't have any immediate plans for that specific format, but there's some cool new stuff that we are working on in the new format sort of space, mostly in this limited time category.
Yep. Okay, makes sense. Let's see. Question: ready to elaborate on Pioneer in 2027? So for those who weren't here for the last BNR announcement, we were asked about Pioneer play in 2027. The answer I gave was along the lines of, there is competitive Pioneer play on the current draft of the schedule. That is all still being finalized, so we don't have it ready to announce, but that is currently the plan. is I think the way I answered it. So not ready to elaborate on that. That is all still in the works and not finalized yet, but we're getting there.
I can also say Arena is also looking to find more opportunities for Pioneer, next year aligning with the sort of organized play space.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite arena championships that I've covered were Pioneer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, let's, Dave, while we're there, because, Arena is relatively new to the Pioneer format as, a non-explorer, mostly fully fleshed out format. How's it doing for Arena?
Yeah, it's doing great. It's not as it's around the same level of popularity as something like Timeless. We see it. It's our most popular best of three format, which is I think always like an interesting tidbit. We like that we have another true to tabletop format other than standard. Looking to do more with it into the future.
Yeah, I'll say as well, Arya Karamchandani kind of touched on it a bit in the article, but looking at the data over there, in light of our recent ban a couple of months ago, the format looks like a lot of fun. They were seeing an increased deck diversity in the time since that ban. A lot of people kind of get to choose what sort of style of archetype they want to play. We're seeing a lot of collected company decks that look like a bunch of fun. We're seeing control showing up again. And the most played deck on the whole grid was black-green midrange. It was winning 51% of its matches,
Nothing beats
which
rock.
is
Good old
2%
rock.
more than it needs to win for people to want to play it. So I think the format looks great from where I'm sitting.
Some things beat rock.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Good old rock. Some things do actually beat it. All right. Let's see. Dave, for Brawl, are there any plans to add more cards to Arena so we can make one-to-one copies of our decks in real life? I think this is the core of the question. There are a lot of commanders who are not currently in the game.
Yeah, we were actually, this was common feedback that we saw on socials actually just this week. But, throughout the last couple of months, we were discussing it to see what opportunities there are to take more cards. In general, there's a lot of cards coming to Arena more than there ever has been in Arena's lifetime. So it can be challenging to balance, like, do we take these additional commander components? Do we take previous commander cards from decks that aren't on Arena? Do we take new powered cube cards? Those are sort of all fighting for resources on the card set team. But we are interested in taking more commander cards in the future and sort of increasing our card pool overall for the format. Nothing I can announce or promise right now, but we want more cards as well.
Yep.
I mean, you spoke to the parity on Pioneer being fairly recent, despite Explorer being on Arena for a while. This is something where it is a battle of inches that takes a really long time, but it obviously is something that the team is invested in.
Yeah. I did see another question like that, and Dave, you may not have an answer to this that you can share publicly, but I'll ask it because it's a good question. So we have parity to what we call Tournament Pioneer. There are some cards that are technically not in the format. Are there any plans to do another round of ingestion for Pioneer cards, maybe that have crept up, or anything like that? Is that something you all are looking at?
We do keep an eye on it. I think Ian Adams, who's been here a couple times, he put down a fun challenge where he says, if you can top a tournament with your niche card, we'll put it on the game, we'll put it on Arena. Which I love, and I'm still sort of waiting for someone to pick up that gauntlet. No immediate plans or cards that have risen to that level where we said we need this to have the competitive parity that we would like to have.
Yeah.
But we are watching and do plan to act quickly if that ever happens.
All right. Dave, are there any plans to revisit the banned list for Standard Brawl?
Interesting. None right now. Standard Brawl is a pretty small community. And we've kind of just let them be. Since that format rotates, unlike the other formats, we take a less heavy hand in curating it.
Mm-hmm. I did see a question earlier that I skipped over because it was a bit niche to that format, but I'll ask it since we're here. Has there been any discussion of expanding Standard Brawl from 60 cards to 100 cards?
No, there hasn't. Standard Brawl is sort of like it was what originally Brawl, just Brawl was
Yeah.
seen. It was a, played in paper as well. And we kind of want to hold true to like that version of it that was played in tabletop. So I don't think we're interested in expanding it to 100 cards because, people like playing it
Hmm.
with their standard cards they've collected, and it offers like an alternative to normal 1v1 constructed play.
Okay. All right. I think that is all the questions we can answer. I do see a couple other questions in here. There's a pauper question, some more commander questions, but Gavin's not here, so we don't have everybody to answer those. So we're gonna end it there. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you, Dave, for joining us on this stream. Weekly MTG is going to be taking the week off next week, and then the week after that, we have a very special show. I'm not going to spoil it yet, but we'll have a very special show that will lead into MagicCon Amsterdam. And so Friday the 17th will be that preview panel I was talking about. It will be streamed live from Amsterdam around the world. So definitely tune into that. Till then, we'll see you in 2 weeks.